Referred to as the Heart of Asia, the Graveyard of Empires, and other common names, Afghanistan has continued with a troubled internal situation. It is the troubled past of this war-torn country that hasn't let it develop into a modern and peaceful country. Taken over by the fundamentalist, retrogressive, and brutal Taliban regime after the hasty US withdrawal in August of 2021, Afghanistan's situation continues to be a problem for its inmates as well as the international community. The news of the implementation of retrogressive laws like flogging, stoning, and banning female education have started to flow anew, but the list doesn't end here. Afghanistan's primitivist regime has expanded its plans to implement its agenda to its neighbors by hosting and harboring different terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda, TTP, ISIS, and etc. It has become an active threat to its neighbors. In addition to that, it has invoked claims on territories in neighboring states. This will lead to a full-scale war with its neighbors, even though sporadic skirmishes with Iran and Pakistan continue. Stay with us to know more about the Graveyard of Empires and how it is on path of self-destruction, as well as charting the way that will lead into an abyss. Before moving into how Afghanistan poses a threat of war to its neighbors, let's have a look into how its troubled background is the reason for its current mania. Afghanistan has remained central to global affairs for the past couple of millennia. Since the times of Alexander the Great, the area currently comprised in Afghanistan has been the route for invaders. Some of these invaders settled there permanently. The rugged terrain and tough guy nature of its inhabitants makes Afghans a proud nation, and this is where one of its problems originates, causing territorial disputes with neighboring states. Fast forward to today, Afghanistan gained particular significance in the colonial period because of its role as a buffer zone between Russia and Great Britain. Though both countries made attempts to make it a satellite state, none of them were able to succeed because of the difficult geography and other conditions which make it an inhospitable region for invaders. The First Anglo-Afghan War took place from 1838 to 1842. The war took place as the result of the British efforts to control Afghanistan in order to contain Russia. The effort resulted in the loss of more than 200 British lives, but to no avail as British soldiers were recalled to India after the war. The Second Anglo-Afghan War proved to be a more dreadful experience for the British. Though the total number of soldiers dead is unknown, the estimated number of deaths on both sides is about 10,000. Though British made the best possible efforts to control Afghanistan, it proved to be an elusive struggle. Fast forward, 1979 brought Soviets to Afghanistan, but Afghan resilience and support from the US and its allies made it an impossible job for the Soviets to hold on to this territory. An estimated number of 15,000 Soviet soldiers were left dead, over 53,000 were wounded, while over 415,000 fell sick there. The loss of tanks, aircraft, and other military equipment is also considerable, causing financial loss in the billions. A decade after the Soviet retreat, Afghanistan couldn't achieve peace. The warring factions led to the emergence of hardline fundamentalists, the Taliban, which after controlling the massive territory, began to host and harbor global terrorist organizations. The result was the 9/11 attacks on the Twin Towers in New York City, United States. The Taliban regime drew the ire of the US and Afghanistan, was attacked in October of 2001. US and its allies stayed in Afghanistan till August 15, 2021, but Taliban couldn't be eradicated. They were back in power as a result of a deal with the US. And Afghanistan was back to the situation where it began in 2001. An estimated expenditure of $2.3 trillion, loss of 2,300 US military personnel, and 3,917 US contractors and 1,144 allied troops couldn't prevent the fall of Afghanistan into Taliban's hands. And this is where another of Afghanistan's problems originates, threatening to the security of its neighbors. Afghanistan is headed to war with all its neighbors, and it has reasons of its own for this war. It has grudges with neighbors ranging from Pakistan to Iran, China, and 3 other stand states. it has regions like religious differences, fundamentalists' approach, and territorial claims. Firstly, Pakistan, Afghanistan's neighbor to the east and south, is one of the most threatened states after the Taliban takeover. Because of its colonial legacy, Pakistan faces problems of reiterated calls of non-recognition on the Durand Line from Afghanistan nationalists who call it an imaginary line. Called Durand Line, this line was a result of the Treaty of Gandamak, which led to the annexation of frontier areas in Balochistan and NWFP to British Raj. Despite the official status of these treaties, Afghan nationalists have rattled Pakistani authorities, which called for annexation of disputed areas and frontier of Balochistan. Because of Taliban's regime harboring TTP, Al-Qaeda, and other terrorist organizations, Pakistan has been facing a severe existential threat causing thousands of deaths from terrorist activities annually, which may lead to an all-out war. Border skirmishes and airstrikes from Pakistani authorities have become normal. Water issues are another problem which further strain relationships between these two neighbors. Plans to build dams or change the course of rivers can lead to barren lands in Pakistan, which can escalate the situation. Afghanistan's neighbor to the west, Iran, is no longer safe in the current scenario. Taliban's agenda to promote the Sunni fundamentalist version of Islam and suppression of all other versions has brought it in a direct conflict with Iran. Even Iran's former president Mahmoud Ahmadinejad has called Taliban a satanic cult for their actions. Water issues are also adding to the strained relationships where feud over Helmand rivers can lead to a major outbreak of war between the two theocracies. Iranian provinces of Sistan and Balochistan can face acute shortages of water and drought as a result of the water issue. Guess what? Afghanistan has issues with every neighbor, and it built 2 dams on the Helmand River in the 1950s despite its treaty with Iran regarding water allocation. A war of words also ensued from both sides as a result of a recent call from Iran for allocation of its water resources. The escalation from this war of words also resulted in border clashes, resulting in the death of 1 Afghan soldier and 2 IRGC guards. An interesting fact is that the Helmand River also marks the border between these two states. According to NRF, is another reason that Taliban regime has openly threatened Iran's Mullah regime. Heads of resistant factions like Ahmad Massoud and Amrullah Saleh are also based in Iran, which adds to the gravity of the situation. It is yet to see how Taliban will handle this situation and how long they will hold themselves. Tajikistan and Uzbekistan are no safer after Taliban regime took over Afghanistan. Border clashes, truck seizures, and other provocative actions have led to border closures from these countries. Taliban have deployed battalions of suicide bombers from the terrorist organization Lashkar-e-Mansouri in different provinces, adding to the anxieties of these Central Asian states. Taliban won't refrain from terrorism, and ultimately there will be no other option for these states to retaliate. Though Turkmenistan officially doesn't recognize the Taliban regime, its territory is being used to smuggle heroin and other drugs from Afghanistan. Ideological differences are one of the main reasons that causes friction between Afghanistan's Taliban regime and its neighbors. Harboring terrorists has been one of the main areas that Taliban regime has a knack for. East Turkestan movement was funded and supported by Taliban, and it became a grave concern for Chinese over the past couple of decades. Even though China has been on friendly terms with the current Taliban regime, the day is no far when calls for jihad might be heard on Sino-Afghan borders, rattling for the global giant. The fall of the Ghani regime in August of 2021 brought chaos to the country. Taliban took over the country sooner than expected, and it left them in control of a big cache of arms and ammo. According to the US estimates, arms roughly a value of $7 billion were left in Afghanistan. Armored vehicles, helicopters, and other equipment of modern warfare was left in the hands of a savage cult. There are no two views on the fact that this cache of ammo would be used to promote terrorism. An evident example is terrorist activities in KP and Balochistan in areas of Pakistan. Thousands of military and police personnel have died as a result of terrorist activities sponsored by Afghanistan's Taliban regime. Pakistan has warned Afghanistan to restrict these terrorist elements and be ready to face consequences if all this continues. Closure or bordering clashes between Iranian and Afghan border guards also suggest increasing tension that could lead to intense escalation. Uzbekistan and Tajikistan might not be able to restrain themselves from military action if the brinkmanship from Taliban continues. The current scenario leads to a question of whether Afghanistan is really headed to an all-out war with its neighbors. The answer may be an affirmative because no state can compromise for long over foreign interference, especially terrorism. Afghanistan, becoming the center of major terrorist organizations since the American departure, has continued to provoke retaliation from Pakistan and Iran. There are calls for militaries of both states to put a definitive end to this problem. It is yet to be seen how Afghan people will suffer because of the reckless actions of their illegitimate rulers, the Taliban. Human catastrophe impacts on two nuclear powers, Islamic militancy and increased tensions on borders, can be the possible results of Taliban brinkmanship. Lower trade and related consequences might also follow. The Taliban should pay heed to what might be awaiting them, as their policy of continued harboring of terrorism might not be tolerated for long. They might be looking for an all-out war with neighbors to divert attention from internal problems, but it may have graver consequences than imagined. Thank you for watching our Afghanistan video. Like and share if you found it interesting. Subscribe to watch more videos like this.